Captain Dongwoo Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the stars through the main viewport. The ship moved slowly through the Kepler 442 system on its third day of exploration. Everything looked normal. Too normal. "Captain, we have something on long-range sensors," said Navigator Bioram Choi from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel. "Distance is about 50,000 kilometers off our starboard side." Dongwoo walked over to look at the display screen. A small blip showed on the scanner. It was not moving, just sitting there, in empty space like a dead rock. "What do you think it is, Bioram?" "Hard to tell, sir. The size suggests it might be a ship, but it is giving off no energy readings. No heat signatures, nothing that would indicate life." Chief Engineer Eugene Park looked up from her engineering console. "Could be a derelict vessel, Captain. We should be careful. Dead ships in deep space usually mean trouble." Dongwoo nodded. Eugene was right to be cautious. In his 15 years of deep space exploration, he had learned that things that seemed too convenient usually were. "Taeho, what is our weapon status?" he asked Weapons Officer Taeho Lee. "All systems are green, Captain. Shields are at full power. Main cannons are ready if needed." "Good, BORM. Change course and take us closer, but keep us at 20,000 kilometers distance. I want to get a better look at whatever that thing is." The horizon turned slowly toward the unknown object. The ship's engines hummed quietly as they adjusted course. Most of the 847 crew members were going about their normal duties. They had no idea that their lives were about to change forever. As they got closer, the object became clearer on the main screen. It was definitely a ship, but unlike any design they had seen before. The hull was dark and seemed to absorb light. Rather than reflect it, strange symbols were carved along the sides. "Captain, I am getting some energy readings now," said Bioram. "Very faint, but they are there. Whatever this ship is, it still has some power left." Dr. Yoonji Song walked onto the bridge carrying a datapad. She was the ship's chief scientist and physicist. "Captain, I have been analyzing the sensor data. That ship is definitely not from Earth. The materials and design are completely alien." "How alien are we talking about, Doctor?" "Very alien, sir. I have never seen anything like it in our databases. This could be first contact with a non-human intelligence." Dongwoo felt his heart beat faster. First contact was what every explorer dreamed of, but it was also what every explorer feared. They had no way of knowing if these aliens were friendly or hostile. "Communications Officer Dayun, you try to establish contact with the vessel. Use all standard first contact protocols." Dayun's fingers moved across her control board. "Sending greeting messages on all frequencies, sir, including mathematical sequences and basic pictographs." They waited. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Everyone watched the main screen showing the mysterious, alien vessel. "No response, Captain," said Dayun, after several minutes. "The ship appears to be completely dead." "Sir, recommend we send over a small exploration team," suggested First Officer Hyan Sunam. "If this really is an alien vessel, we need to investigate. This could be the most important discovery in human history." Dongwoo was about to agree when the space around them suddenly exploded into light. Dozens of ships materialized out of nowhere. They appeared like ghosts becoming solid. The horizon was completely surrounded. "Red alert," shouted Dongwoo, "all hands to battle stations." The alien ships were massive. Each one was at least 3 times the size of the horizon. Their hulls were the same dark material as the derelict ship, but these vessels were very much alive. Energy weapons charged along their sides. Launch bays opened, revealing smaller fighter craft. "Captain, we are being hailed," said Dayun. Her voice was steady, but Dongwoo could hear the fear underneath. "Put it on screen." The main viewer changed to show the inside of an alien bridge. The creature that appeared was unlike anything from Earth's imagination. It stood nearly 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished metal. Its eyes were large and completely black. When it spoke, its voice was deep and seemed to echo. "I am War Commander Vextel of the Valdorian Empire. You have entered our territory without permission. Your primitive vessel will surrender immediately." Dong stepped forward. "This is Captain Dongwoo Kim of the United Earthship Horizon. We are on a peaceful exploration mission. We did not know this space belonged to anyone." Vextel made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peaceful. How amusing. Your kind always claims to be peaceful until you are shown the truth of power. You will shut down all weapons and engines. Prepared to be boarded." "I am afraid I cannot do that," said Dongwoo. "We are a sovereign vessel from Earth. We have committed no crimes and will not surrender our ship." The alien commander's expression changed. The black eyes seemed to grow even darker. "You dare refuse the Valdorian Empire? You pathetic creatures have no idea what you face. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have enslaved 100 species. Your Earth is nothing but a small rock circling a weak star." Taeho stepped up beside his captain. "Sir, we are seriously outgunned. I count 37 enemy vessels. Our weapons would barely scratch their armor." "Did you hear that, human?" said Vextel. "Your own weapons officer knows the truth. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. Refuse, and we will make you suffer. Dongwu looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people. Scientists and explorers who had signed up to discover new worlds and expand human knowledge. They did not deserve to die because of one man's decision, but he also knew that surrender meant slavery or death anyway. The aliens' words made that clear. They saw humans as nothing more than animals to be conquered. Commander Vextel said, Dongwu slowly, I have a message for you and your empire. Humanity does not kneel. We do not surrender. And we do not go quietly into the dark. The alien's face twisted with rage. So be it primitive, you will learn what happens to those who defy the Valdorian Empire. But we will not grant you the mercy of a quick death. Your ship will be disabled. Your crew will die slowly while we broadcast your suffering across our territory. Let all species see what happens to those who refuse to submit. The transmission ended. The bridge fell silent, except for the sound of charging weapons from the alien fleet. Dongwu knew that in the next few minutes everything would change. But he also knew that his crew would face whatever came with courage. The battle for human dignity was about to begin. The Valdorian weapons struck the horizon with precision that spoke of centuries of practice. Captain Dongwu felt the ship shake as energy beams cut through their hull like hot knives through paper. But these were not killing blows. They were surgical strikes designed to cripple without destroying. Engineering report, shouted Dongwu over the sound of failing systems. Chief Engineer Yujin Park's voice came through the comm system crackling with static. Captain, they are targeting our primary systems one by one. Main engines are offline, weapons are down. They just took out our main communications array. Another wave of alien fire hit the ship. This time the lights went out completely. Emergency. Power kicked in a few seconds later, bathing everything in red light. The bridge looked like something from a nightmare. Life support status, asked First Officer Hyeon-Soo Nam. Still running on emergency power, replied Yujin, but they just damaged the main life support processors. We have maybe 72 hours of breathable air left. Dongwu closed his eyes for a moment. The aliens were not trying to kill them quickly. They wanted the crew to die slowly while broadcasting their suffering across their empire. It was psychological warfare designed to break the spirit of anyone who might resist them. Captain incoming transmission from the Valdorian fleet said, Communications Officer, Dayun, you put it through. War Commander Vextel appeared on the main screen again. Behind him, Dongwu could see other alien officers watching with what looked like amusement. How do you feel now, human captain? Your mighty ship is now nothing more than a floating coffin. In 3 days your crew will begin suffocating. We will watch every moment of your death and broadcast it to our empire as entertainment. You are a monster, said Dongwu. I am efficient, replied Vextel. We have performed this same demonstration on 47 different species. Each time the result is the same. First comes defiance, then desperation, finally begging and pleading for mercy that never comes. Your species will be no different. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Dongwu looked around at his crew. He could see fear in their eyes, but also determination. These people had not given up yet. All senior officers to the conference room, said Dongwu, we need to talk. 10 minutes later, the ship's senior staff gathered around the conference table. The emergency lighting made everyone look pale and tired, but their eyes were alert and focused. Options, said Dongwu simply. We could try to repair the communications system, suggested Dayun. Maybe get a message back to Earth, warning them about the aliens are jamming all frequencies, replied Navigator Bioram Choi. Even if we fixed the transmitter, nothing would get through. What about the engines? Asked Hyeon-Soo Nam. Yujin shook her head. They melted the main reactor coupling. It would take weeks to repair, even if we had the parts. Which we do not, double quotes. Dr. Yoonji Song had been quiet during the discussion. Now she looked up from her datapad. There might be another option, but it would be extremely dangerous. Everyone turned to look at the physicist. She had a reputation for brilliant but risky ideas. Explain, said Dongwu. The aliens disabled our main systems, but they left the experimental quantum tunneling drive alone, probably because they do not recognize the technology. The quantum drive is just a prototype, said Yu. We have never even tested it. Exactly, said Yoonji, but if we could overload the quantum core, it would create a massive energy release. More energy than our entire ship's reactor could produce in a year. Weapons Officer Taeho Lee leaned forward. Are you talking about turning our ship into a bomb? Not exactly a bomb, replied Yoonji, more like a kinetic projectile. If we could channel that energy release through the ship's mass, we could accelerate the horizon to incredible speeds. How fast? Asked Bo-Ram.Eung. Checked her calculations. Again, based on our current mass and the theoretical energy output of an overloaded quantum core, maybe 12% of light speed. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed what she was suggesting. 12% of light speed meant the ship would hit whatever it struck with the force of a small star exploding. Where exactly would we aim this projectile? Asked Dongwu quietly. BRM brought up a star chart on the wall display. We are currently positioned directly above the largest moon of Valdorian Prime. According to our sensor readings, that moon houses their primary military command center. You are talking about a suicide mission, said Medical Officer G1 Han. She had been quiet until now, but her voice was steady. We are already on a suicide mission, replied Hyen Sunam. The question is whether we die for nothing or take some of these monsters with us. Yujin was studying the technical specifications on her tablet. It might work. We would need to strip power from every non-essential system, reroute everything through the quantum core. The timing would have to be perfect. How long would it take? Asked Dongwu. Maybe 60 hours, if we work around the clock. We would be cutting it very close with life support. And there is no guarantee it would work, added Yuji. The quantum drive has never been tested under these conditions. It could fail completely, or it could explode and vaporize us instantly. Dong looked around the table at his officers. These people had followed him into deep space, trusting his judgment. Now he was asking them to follow him into death. I need to know, he said slowly. Are we all in agreement about what this means? If we do this, there is no going back. We will not be returning to Earth. We will not see our families again. Captain, said Taeho quietly. These aliens have been doing this for centuries. They have destroyed entire civilizations for entertainment. If we do nothing, they will eventually find Earth. And when they do, added Eugenie, our families will face the same choice we face now. At least this way we can hurt them first. G1 nodded. Slowly, the Hippocratic Oath says first, do no harm. But sometimes the only way to prevent greater harm is to accept smaller harm. If our deaths can save others, then it is worth it. One by one, each officer nodded their agreement. Even knowing it meant death, they were willing to try. All right then, said Dongwu. Yujin, I want you to start pulling power from every system we do not absolutely need. Yunji, work on the quantum core modifications. BRM, calculate our exact trajectory to that command moon. Everyone else, help where you can. As his officers left to begin their work, Dongwu remained in the conference room alone. In 60 hours, his ship would either strike a devastating blow against humanity's enemies or simply explode in empty space. Either way, the crew of the Horizon would not live to see the outcome. But maybe their sacrifice would mean something. Chief Engineer Yujin Park stood in the main engineering bay watching her crew work with desperate efficiency. The air was getting thinner with each passing hour, but no one complained. They all knew what was at stake. Minho, bring me the power. Coupling from Section 7, she called to engineering specialist Minho Kong. He was crawling through a maintenance shaft pulling cables that would normally take a full engineering team to handle. Got it, Chief, came his muffled reply. But the insulation on these lines is pretty damaged. We might get some power fluctuations. We only need it to work for a few more hours, said Yujin. After that, it will not matter. Across the bay, engineer Soyoung Lim was working on rerouting the ship's main power grid. She had been at it for 18 hours straight with only short breaks for water and nutrition bars. Her hands were steady, despite the exhaustion. Chief, I have power from decks 4 through 7, redirected to the quantum core, she reported. But we are going to lose gravity on those levels. Acceptable, replied Yujin. Most of the crew is already working in zero gravity anyway. The ship had become a maze of floating workers and equipment. With main power gone, the artificial gravity only worked in essential areas. But the crew had adapted quickly. Humans were good at adapting. In the weapons bay, Taeho Lee was leading a different kind of engineering project. His teams were stripping armor plating from the ship's hull to create heat shields for the quantum core. Careful with that section, he warned weapons technician Jae-Sung Kim. We need those plates intact. They have to protect the core during our descent through the atmosphere. How many plates do we need, sir? Asked Jae-Sung. As many as we can get, replied Taeho. The quantum core will be generating more heat than a small sun when it overloads. Without proper shielding, it will melt before we reach the target. Nearby, weapons specialist Hyejin Lim was working on a completely different problem. She was modifying the ship's structural supports to handle the massive acceleration forces they would experience. The hull was not designed for this kind of stress. She said to Taeho, when we hit 12% light speed, the acceleration forces will be enormous. Will it hold together? Asked Taeho. Maybe, replied Hyejin. I am reinforcing the main support beams with spare hull plating, but there are no guarantees. On the bridge, navigator Bjoram Choi was working on navigation calculations that would have been impossible under normal circumstances. She was trying to plot a course that would take them from their current position to the Valdorian command moon with perfect precision. The target is moving, she muttered to herself while checking the numbers for the 10th time. Orbital mechanics at relativistic speeds. This is insane. First Officer Hyan Sunam looked over her shoulder at the calculations. How close do we need to get? Ideally, we need a direct impact, replied Bjoram. But even a near miss at these speeds would cause massive damage to their facilities. What about the Valdorian ships? Asked Hyeon-su. Will they try to intercept us? Bjarm pulled up a tactical display. They are maintaining their current positions around us. I think they want to watch us die slowly. They have no idea what we are planning. In the medical bay, Dr. Ji-won Han was dealing with a different kind of challenge. The crew was working in dangerous conditions with failing life support. Injuries were becoming common. Hold still, she told communications technician Woo-jin Park as she bandaged a cut on his arm. You need to be more careful when working with damaged equipment. Sorry, Doc, replied Woo-jin, but we are running out of time. The communication array modifications are almost complete. G1 had been using stimulants to keep the crew conscious as oxygen levels dropped. It was dangerous but necessary. They needed every person working at full capacity. How much longer can we keep this up? Asked medical technician Jin. Oh, maybe 36 hours, replied G1. After that, people will start passing out from oxygen deprivation. We need to finish this project before then. In the quantum drive chamber, Dr. Yoonji Song was working on the most dangerous part of the entire plan. She was modifying the drive to create a controlled implosion that would compress the ship's mass into a hyper-dense projectile. The theory is sound, she explained to Chief Engineer Yoojin, who had come to check on her progress. But we have never tested anything like this before. What are the risks? Asked Yoojin. Complete failure, premature detonation, uncontrolled fusion reaction. Take your pick, replied Yoonji. We are basically turning our ship into a relativistic missile. The margin for error is zero. Yoojin nodded grimly. What do you need from us? Perfect timing, said Yoonji. The quantum core has to reach critical mass at exactly the right moment. Too early, and we explode before reaching the target. Too late, and we miss completely. Throughout the ship, similar scenes were playing out. The crew was performing engineering miracles with failing equipment and limited time. But they were making progress. In the hydroponics bay, botanist Kungmin Yu and agricultural specialist Dong Hyun-seo were stripping the ship's food production systems to provide additional power to the quantum core. Shame to waste all these plants, said Kungmin as he disconnected the growing chambers. They will not be wasted if our plan works, replied Dong Haeun. Every bit of power we can redirect might make the difference. The Valdorian ships continued to watch from a safe distance. Their commanders were broadcasting the slow death of the human crew to their empire as promised, but they were missing the real story. War Commander Vextel stood on his bridge watching the thermal readings. From the human ship, their power output is dropping steadily. Life support is failing as expected. Soon they will begin the final phase of their suffering. Should we move closer to get better images? Asked his tactical officer. No, replied Vextel. Maintain current distance. Dying creatures sometimes act unpredictably. We will watch from here. The alien commander had no idea that the humans were not trying to repair their ship. They were converting it into a weapon, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Back on the horizon, Captain Dongwoo made his rounds, checking on the different work teams. Everywhere he went, he saw the same thing. Exhausted humans pushing themselves beyond their limits because they refused to give up. How are we doing, Yoojin? He asked when he reached engineering. Ahead of schedule, actually, she replied. The crew is working like their lives depend on it, which I suppose they do. Any problems I should know about? Just one, said Yoojin. When we activate the quantum core, there will be no way to shut it down. Once we start this process, we are committed to seeing it through to the end. Dongwoo nodded. He had expected as much. Make sure everyone understands that I want every person on this ship to know exactly what we are doing. They already know, Captain, replied Yoojin, and they are all still here working. That should tell you something about your crew. As Dongwoo continued his rounds, he felt a strange mixture of pride and sadness. Pride in his crew's courage and determination. Sadness that such good people had to die for the universe to learn that humans would not go quietly. But if their sacrifice saved even one other species from the Valdorians, then it would be worth it. The crew of the Horizon would make sure their enemies remembered them. Communications Officer Dayun, you had been working for 36 hours straight, trying to break through the Valdorian jamming signals. Her eyes burned from staring at screens, but she refused to stop. The crew needed to know what they were really fighting against. I think I have something. She called to Captain Dongwoo, who was checking on her progress. The aliens are broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Most of it is encrypted, but some of the lower priority channels are not as well protected. What kind of broadcasts? Asked Dongwoo. Entertainment transmissions, mostly. But Captain, you need to hear this. Dayun played back an audio recording she had managed to decode. The alien voices were speaking in their own language, but the ship's computer had been working on translation algorithms. Today marks another glorious victory for the Valdorian Empire. The pathetic humans of the vessel Horizon are now entering their final hours. Watch as these primitive creatures slowly suffocate in their metal coffin. The recording continued with what sounded like cheering and celebration from alien audiences across their empire. They are broadcasting our deaths as entertainment, said Dongwoo grimly. It gets worse, Captain, replied Dayun. I found historical records in their data streams. This is not the first time they have done this. She pulled up translated text files on her screen. The information made Dongwu's blood run cold. The Kepler species lasted for days before begging for mercy. The Rigel colonies held out for 6 days but eventually broke. Each death was broadcast across the empire to show other species the futility of resistance. Dongwu read through more of the records. Species after species had been tortured and killed for the entertainment of the Valdorian Empire. Entire civilizations wiped out not for resources or territory but simply because the aliens enjoyed watching others suffer. How many? Asked Dongwu. Quietly, according to these records, at least 47 different species have been completely eliminated. Billions of lives lost for nothing more than entertainment. First Officer Hyansu Nam had been listening from his station. Captain, we need to share this with the crew. They deserve to know what we are really fighting. Dongwu nodded and activated the ship-wide communication system. Throughout the horizon, exhausted crew members stopped their work to listen to their captain's voice. This is Captain Kim speaking to all hands. I have information that changes everything we thought we knew about our situation. He paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The Valdorians are not just conquerors. They are not expanding their territory or seeking resources. They are genocidal monsters who destroy entire species for entertainment. Our communications officer has found records showing they have eliminated 47 different civilizations. The ship fell silent as the crew absorbed this information. Each species was given the same choice we were given: submit or die slowly while their suffering is broadcast across the alien empire. Every single species eventually broke and begged for mercy, but the mercy never came. In Engineering Bay, Yujin Park looked up from her work. Around her, the other engineers had stopped what they were doing to listen. We are not the first to face this choice, continued the captain. We will not be the last. But we have something the other species did not have. We have a way to hurt them back. In the medical bay, Ji-Won Han felt tears in her eyes. Not just for her own crew, but for all the innocent beings who had died before them. Our plan is no longer just about survival or even revenge. It is about stopping these monsters from doing to others what they have done to us. Every human life lost here might save thousands of lives elsewhere. Down in the quantum chamber, Dr. Yoon Ji-song continued working on the drive modifications while listening to the captain's words. The weight of responsibility felt enormous. I want every person on this ship to understand what we are doing. We are not just dying for humanity, we are dying for every species these aliens might encounter in the future. We are making sure that our deaths have meaning. The transmission ended, leaving the ship in thoughtful silence. Then slowly, the work resumed. But now, there was a different quality to it. The crew was no longer just fighting for their own dignity. They were fighting for justice. In the weapons bay, Taeho Lee gathered his team around him. You heard the captain. This is bigger than just us now. Those heat shields we are building might be the only thing standing between the Valdorians and their next victims. We will not let them down, sir, replied weapons technician Jae-Soon Kim. His voice was firm despite the exhaustion. Back on the bridge, navigator Bioram Choi was running final calculations for their approach to the Valdorian command moon. The orbital mechanics were incredibly complex, but she was determined to get them right. Captain, I have been thinking about our target, she said. That command moon does not just house their military headquarters. According to our scans, it also contains their main communication arrays. What does that mean? Asked Dongwu. If we destroy it, we will not just be eliminating their leadership. We will be cutting off communication to their entire fleet. Their ships will be operating blind. Hyansu looked up from his station. That could cause chaos throughout their empire. Ships unable to coordinate. Colonies left without orders. Exactly, replied Bioram. Our sacrifice might do more damage than we originally thought. Meanwhile, Dayun continued, monitoring Valdorian communications. She had discovered something else in their transmissions that made her stomach turn. Captain, I found something else. The Valdorians have a schedule. They plan to move on to their next target after they finish with us. Who is the next target? Asked Dongwu, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Earth, Captain. They have already sent scout ships to study our home system. The invasion fleet will follow once they finish broadcasting our deaths. The bridge fell silent as everyone realized what this meant. If they failed, their families and everyone they had ever known would face the same fate. How long do we have? Asked Hyansu. According to their timeline, about 6 months, maybe less, if they decide to speed up the schedule. Dongwu felt the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. The crew of the Horizon was not just fighting for abstract justice anymore. They were fighting for their home world. This information does not leave the bridge, he said quietly. The crew has enough to worry about without knowing Earth is next. But privately, he made a decision. Their attack on the Valdorian command center had to succeed, not just to avenge the species that had died before, but to protect the world they called home. In 6 hours, they would begin their final descent toward the enemy moon. Success would mean striking a devastating blow against humanity's greatest enemy. Failure would mean Earth would face the same choice they were facing now. the crew of the Horizon carried the hopes of two worlds on their shoulders as they raced against time to complete their desperate plan. The final countdown had begun. Captain Dongwoo Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the main display screen show their target growing larger. The Valdorian command moon filled the viewport like a gray and silver metal world. "All stations report. Ready, Captain?" said First Officer Hyan Sunam. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the tension underneath. "Engineering status," Yujin called Dongwoo into his communicator. Chief Engineer, Yujin Park's voice crackled back through the failing communication system. "Quantum core is at 95% power, Captain. All safety systems have been removed as planned. Once we hit 100%, there will be no stopping the reaction." Around the ship, the crew had taken their final positions. Most were now wearing emergency suits because the atmosphere was too thin to breathe normally. They looked like ghosts moving through the red emergency lighting. "Medical teams report all crew members are at their stations," said Dr. Ji-Won Han from the medical bay. "Everyone is conscious and ready." The ship began to vibrate as the quantum core approached critical mass. The sound was unlike anything they had heard before. It was like the ship itself was screaming in pain. "Navigator, what is our approach angle?" asked Dong-Woo. Bo-Ram-Choi checked her calculations one more time. "Perfect trajectory, Captain. We will impact the primary command center at maximum velocity. The moon's thin atmosphere will not slow us down significantly." "Weapon status," called Dong-Woo. Taeho Lee's voice came from the weapons bay. "Heat shields are in place, Captain. The quantum core should survive atmospheric entry. All structural reinforcements are complete." The vibration was getting stronger now. Tools and loose equipment that had not been secured began rattling against the walls. The ship's hull was beginning to stress under the massive forces building inside the quantum drive. "Communications, any response from the Valdorian fleet?" asked Dong-Woo. Do-Yoon, you shook her head. "Nothing yet, Captain. I think they still believe we are just trying to restore life support." On the main screen, the command moon was getting much larger. They could see the details of its surface now. Massive metal structures covered the gray landscape. Weapon emplacements and communication towers stretched toward space like metal fingers. 5 minutes to atmospheric entry," announced Bo-Ram. The quantum core reached 100% power, and the ship's vibration became violent. Everyone had to hold on to something to keep from being thrown around. The sound was deafening even through their helmets. "Core containment is failing as expected," reported Yujin over the noise. "We are now past the point of no return. The reaction will continue until we impact the target." Dongwoo activated the ship-wide communication system. "For the last time, all hands, this is your captain. In 4 minutes we will enter the enemy moon's atmosphere. In 6 minutes we will impact their command center. It has been an honor to serve with all of you." He paused, listening to the sound of his ship tearing itself apart around them. "Remember that we are not dying for nothing. Every second of this mission might save millions of lives. Earth will remember us. The galaxy will remember us. And the Valdorians will never forget us." The transmission ended as they hit the outer edge of the moon's atmosphere. Immediately, the ship began to glow white-hot as friction heated the hull to incredible temperatures. "Hull temperatures is rising rapidly," reported engineering specialist Min-Ho Kong from his station. "The heat shields are holding, but just barely." Through the viewport they could see the ship's hull beginning to melt and stream away behind them like a comet's tail. But the quantum core remained protected deep inside the vessel. On the Valdorian, command moon alarms began sounding in the military headquarters. Defense Officer Krelton stared at his sensors in disbelief. "War Commander, the human vessel is approaching at impossible speed," he reported to his superior. "War Commander," Vextel rushed to the tactical display. "What do you mean, approaching? They are disabled. They have no engines." "Sir, the ship is moving at 12% light speed and accelerating. Impact in 3 minutes." For the first time since the encounter began, Vextel felt fear. "Activate all planetary defenses. Destroy that ship before it reaches us." "Sir, our weapons are not designed to stop objects moving at relativistic speeds. We cannot get a lock on the target." Energy beams lanced up from the moon's surface trying to hit the approaching human ship. But the Horizon was moving too fast, and the heat distortion around its hull made targeting impossible. "All personnel evacuate the command center immediately," ordered Vextel, but he knew it was too late. Nothing could survive the impact they were about to experience. Back on the Horizon, the crew maintained their positions even as the ship disintegrated. Around them, the outer hull was completely gone now. Internal bulkheads were melting away, but the quantum core continued its controlled explosion deep in the ship's center. 2 minutes to impact," called Bo-Ram, though her voice was barely audible over the noise. Captain Dongwoo looked around the bridge at his officers. These brave people had followed him into the depths of space, and now they were following him into death itself. He could not have asked for a better crew. 1 minute to impact, announced Bo-Ram. The ship's computer systems were failing one by one as the heat and radiation destroyed the electronics. But the quantum core needed no computers. Now it was a runaway reaction that would continue until it released all its energy in one devastating moment. 30 seconds. Called Bo-Ram. Through the melting viewport they could see individual buildings on the command moon. Valdorian personnel were running in panic trying to escape the incoming projectile, but there was nowhere to run. 10 seconds, said Bo-Ram. Dong-Wu closed his eyes and thought about Earth, about the blue skies and green forests his crew would never see again, about the billions of people who would never know that 847 humans had died to protect them. 5 seconds. The Valdorian command center filled their view completely. Massive metal structures that had stood for thousands of years were about to be erased from existence. Impact, whispered Bo-Ram. In that final moment, Captain Dong-Wu opened his eyes and smiled. The crew of the UES Horizon had kept their promise. They had refused to go quietly into the dark. The ship carrying its overloaded quantum core struck the Valdorian command moon with the force of a dying star. Everything disappeared. In a flash of light, brighter than the system's sun, the explosion that destroyed the Valdorian command moon could be seen from 3 star systems away. The UES Horizon and its overloaded quantum core released more energy in a single moment than most stars produced in a year. The moon simply ceased to exist. 1 second, it was a massive military installation housing the command center of a galactic empire. The next second, it was an expanding cloud of superheated plasma and debris. Admiral Korvash of the Valdorian Third Fleet was on his flagship when the shockwave hit. The bridge shook violently as gravitational distortions rolled across space like invisible tsunamis. Report, he demanded of his sensor officer. Sir, the command moon is gone. Completely destroyed. The explosion registered as a Class 12 stellar event. Korvash stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Where the moon had been, there was now only empty space and expanding energy clouds. What about War Commander Vextel and the High Command? All dead, sir. The entire military leadership was on that moon. Fleet Admiral Zexgorin, Strategic Command, the War Planning Council, all of them. The implications hit Korvash like a physical blow. The Valdorian Empire had just lost its entire military command structure. Decades of strategic planning, thousands of years of accumulated military knowledge, all destroyed by a single human ship. Sir, we are receiving emergency transmissions from across the Empire, reported the communications officer. Fleet commanders are asking for orders. Colony governors want to know what to do? No one knows who is in charge anymore. Similar scenes were playing out on Valdorian ships throughout the galaxy. The Empire's military had been built around a rigid command hierarchy. With the top leadership gone, the entire structure was collapsing into chaos. On the bridge of the destroyer Kethmoran, Captain Volder tried to contact fleet headquarters for the 15th time. Only static answered his calls. Sir, what are our orders? Asked his tactical officer. I do not know, replied Volder honestly. Without the high command, we have no strategic direction. We are operating blind. The same conversation was happening on thousands of Valdorian ships across dozens of star systems. The empire that had conquered countless worlds was suddenly leaderless and confused. But the real damage was not just military. The Valdorians had been broadcasting the slow death of the human crew across their empire as entertainment. Instead, they had transmitted humanity's greatest act of defiance to billions of alien viewers. On the mining world of Kethver, the enslaved, Rigel colonists watched the recorded broadcasts in secret. They had seen their own people tortured and killed by the Valdorians years before. Now they watched humans refuse to surrender, even in death. Did you see that? Whispered Rigel worker Dalvin to his friend. The humans turned their ship into a weapon. They destroyed the entire command moon. The Valdorians said it was impossible to resist them, replied his companion. But the humans proved them wrong. Word spread quickly through the slave populations on hundreds of worlds. The mighty Valdorian Empire could be hurt. The humans had shown the way. On the Kepler homeworld, the surviving members of that once proud species gathered in secret meeting places. Their own military had been destroyed years ago, but they still remembered how to fight. The humans gave us a gift, said former General Kepton to the underground resistance leaders. They showed us that even small actions can have huge consequences. We may not have starships anymore, but we have other weapons. Within days, reports began reaching surviving Valdorian commanders of uprisings on slave worlds. Sabotage in the mines. Attacks on garrison forces. The subject species that had been quiet for years were suddenly remembering how to fight back. 6 months after the destruction of the command moon, a human rescue fleet finally arrived at the Kepler 442 system. Admiral Sarah Chen commanded the largest military force Earth had ever assembled. 50 warships armed with every weapon humanity could devise. Admiral, we are detecting massive debris fields throughout the system, reported her sensor officer. Something big happened here. Any sign of the horizon? Asked Admiral Chen. No, sir. but we are picking up transmissions from the surviving Valdorian ships. They appear to be in full retreat. On the main screen they could see the remnants of the once mighty Valdorian fleet. The ships that had seemed so threatening to the crew of the Horizon now looked like frightened animals fleeing into deep space. Admiral, incoming transmission from the lead Valdorian vessel, announced the communications officer. Put it through. The alien commander who appeared on screen looked nothing like the confident war commander, Vextall, who had captured the Horizon. This creature was clearly terrified. Human fleet, this is Admiral Corvash of the Valdorian forces. We are withdrawing from this system. We want no conflict with your species. Where is the UES Horizon? Demanded Admiral Chen. Your ship. They. The alien commander struggled to find words. They destroyed our command moon. The entire high command is dead. We never imagined any species would do such a thing. Admiral Chen studied the sensor readings from the debris field that had once been the Valdorian military headquarters. The energy signatures were consistent with an overloaded quantum drive. Captain Kim and his crew turned their ship into a kinetic weapon, she said quietly to her first officer. They took out the entire enemy command structure. The human fleet spent 3 days searching the system for any survivors from the Horizon. They found none, but they did find something else. Floating in space, near where the command moon had been, was a single piece of debris, a section of hull plating with partial letters still visible. UES Horror was all that remained readable. Take us home, ordered Admiral Chen. The crew of the Horizon have earned their rest. The news of what happened in the Kepler 442 system spread across human space like wildfire. The sacrifice of 847 brave souls had not only saved Earth from invasion, but had shattered the greatest threat humanity had ever faced. On Earth, a memorial was built in the center of Geneva. 847 white pillars stood in perfect formation. At the center was a single black stone with words carved in every human language. They thought they had disabled our ship. They discovered they had armed it. Below that was a longer inscription that told the full story. How Captain Donggu Kim and his crew had refused to surrender. How they had turned their deaths into victory. How they had proven that some species do not just fight to win, but fight to ensure their enemies lose everything. The Valdorian Empire never recovered from the loss of their leadership. Within a year, the empire had collapsed into competing factions fighting among themselves. The species they had enslaved broke free and rebuilt their civilizations. The humans, who had seemed so primitive to War Commander Vextall, became the protectors of the galaxy. Earth's fleets patrolled space, ensuring that no other species would face the choice the crew of the Horizon had faced. And on quiet nights when Earth's children looked up at the stars, they remembered the 847 heroes who had proven that humanity would never kneel, never surrender, and never go quietly into the dark.